expectations a little bit, inshallah. Inshallah, I want you guys to pass the boxes. There should be two in each row, one on each side. You can give with the boxes using cash, or you can scan the QR codes. There's the Venmo, the website, the Zelle. So again, there should be one on each side, inshallah, in each row. Our iqamah time for Fajr is 20 minutes after the adhan. The rest of our iqamah times are published on the TV and on the Masjid Al app. The Ramadan publication and prayer timesheets are now available for you, so you can grab your copy on the way out. Tarbiya and Human Appeals is collaborating for an iftar, so you can register. There are some flyers that are on the office manager's table, and join us on March 14th at 6:30 p.m. at the Mahfil Banquet Hall. You can register for our Quran contest taking place March 22nd from 11 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. You can register at the office manager's table. The Sunnah Club childcare program is open for Taraweeh. If you have any kids between 4 and 8, they must be potty trained, but it's fully free. So you just have to register on the website, and it's going to be in our hall. There are signs that are directing you to the area. Some dua requests. Brother Samad is requesting dua for his friend Muhammad Amin, who passed away while he was very young. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. His mother is struggling as this is her first Ramadan without her son. Ya Allah, we ask you to grant him the highest level of Jannah and to grant his family sabr in this time of hardship. Allahumma ameen. There's a dua request for Ishtiyaq Ahmed, who is hospitalized and in critical condition. Ya Allah, we ask that you give him the fullest shifa, a speedy recovery. Allahumma ameen. Brother Shahzad Siddiqi is requesting dua for his mom's health that has declined recently. She has long-term chronic issues with heart disease and dementia. They put her in a home hospice this last week. Ya Allah, we ask you to grant her the fullest shifa, to give her family sabr in this time of hardship, and to give her a speedy recovery. Allahumma ameen. There's a dua request for Brother Usama. He passed away earlier yesterday after Fajr. He was at THR actually the night before. And his son was actually in my halaqah, subhanAllah, years ago. And you know, someone is with you one day and they're just not with you the next day. They ate suhoor together, they prayed Salatul Fajr, and they woke up later that day and he was just, lying downstairs. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ya Allah, we ask that you give him the highest level of Jannah. We ask you to forgive him of his sins and to grant sabr to his family during this time of hardship. Allahumma ameen. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. As we are going, brothers and sisters, in this journey into the akhirah, on what we call Safinatun Najah, yesterday we observed the first horn of Israfil. We observed how after the first blow of that horn, all living things were made to perish. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took the life of Angel Jibreel. How He took the life of Malakul Maut himself. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives life back to Israfil, the angel who blows the horn. And it said in Surah Al-Zumar, ثُمَّ نُفِخَ فِيهِ أُخْرَى. After he blowed it the first time, he blows it a second time. And that, brothers and sisters, is when resurrection truly begins. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam gives us detailed in the ahadith what happens after this moment. He says, ثُمَّ يُنزِلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاء فَيَنْبُتُونَ كَمَا يَنْبُتُ الْبَقْرِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send down rain from the sky, and the humans will literally sprout from the earth as the green plants used to grow. I want you to imagine that someone who their flesh has decayed over time, they decomposed, their bones disintegrated, and after all of that, it could be hundreds, thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the order, and it's like that time is reversed. وَمَا ذَلِكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ بِعَزِيزٍ. And that is not difficult for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whatsoever. The kuffar used to use this argument. How can anyone bring us back to life after we're long gone? Can the one who brought you from nothing, He cannot bring you back to life? The one who created you from nothing, He cannot bring you back from nothing? And it's every living creature, by the way. It's not just the humans. There was a narration where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting outside, and he saw two sheep, hitting horns on each other. And the stronger one defeated the weaker one. And he smiled. And the companions, they were eager to know the reason behind everything Rasulullah did. So they came to him, why did you smile? Why did you smile when you saw that? And he responded and he said, it's amazing. By the one whose hand is my soul, their score will be settled on Yawm al-Qiyamah. From the most intelligent, most powerful humans to the lowest of animals, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will resurrect every single one, and He will return to them their haqq on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Perhaps that weaker sheep was like, he was stronger than me, it's not fair. He was bigger than me, it's not fair. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will leave no dhulm unaddressed. It's either He addresses it in the dunya or He addresses it in the akhirah. So I want you to imagine this, brothers and sisters. All living creatures of all time are resurrected. All the graves are opened, and everyone is rising from the ground with absolute terror in their eyes. وَخَشَعَتِ الْأَصْوَاتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ فَلَا تَسْمَعُ إِلَّا هَمْسًا. Everyone is hushed before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will not hear anything above a whisper. Everyone is quiet. Even those who are incredibly rude and loud in the dunya. The ones who are obnoxious. The ones who are public about their sins. Everyone is silent before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you'll ask yourself on that night, what am I going to do? What is my destiny? What am I going to say? When is this going to be over? Can I go back to my grave? وَيَقُولُ الْكَافِرُ يَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ تُرَابًا. The kafir will say, I wish I was dust. I wish I was nothing. I wish I had no accountability. I wish I had no judgment. So who will you be on that day, brothers and sisters? On the day when people are so fearful. You know, in the 30th juz, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives lists of the different types of faces that will be present on Yawm al-Qiyamah. You have وُجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ مُسْفِرَةٌ. A face that is bright, that is shining. You have a face that is nadira. It is radiant. But then in contrast to this, you have a face عَلَيْهَا غَبْرَةٌ. It is covered in dust. A face that is basira. It is gloomy. So on that day, brothers and sisters, will you rejoice and laugh and be excited to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or will you be one of those that is shamed? One of those that is gloomy? Your face is filled with despair. You are scared. You are anxious to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all among those whose faces are radiant and rejoicing at the thought of meeting Him. Ameen. Now the first person to be resurrected on Yawm al-Qiyamah is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And it would probably bring us, some type of comfort that He, our intercessor, will be resurrected before us. But the most difficult trial, the most difficult punishment, so to say, on Yawm al-Qiyamah is its long duration. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for the disbeliever, إِنَّ يَوْمًا عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ كَأَلْفِ سَنَةٍ مِمَّا تَعُدُّونَ. In regards to the disbeliever, Yawm al-Qiyamah will be like 1,000 years. Sometimes we complain about the length of the days here. Imagine that multiplied by 10, by 100. As for the believer, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, يَوْمُ الْقِيَامَةِ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كَقَدْرِ مَا بَيْنَ الظُّهْرِ وَالْعَصْرِ. So the Yawm al-Qiyamah is like the time between Dhuhr and Asr, just like 3-4 hours. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the relativity of time to make it more difficult on Yawm al-Qiyamah for the disbelievers, and He makes it easier for the believers. Now before we get on to the topic of judgment itself, which will be discussed tomorrow, I want to talk about al-mawqif. Now this is the standing, this is that waiting period before judgment even begins. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shared with us multiple scenes in the Quran, and Rasulullah shared with us multiple scenes in the ahadith. Now, the position you occupy, the location that you're in, the people that you are next to, all of these will be indications of your destiny on Yawm al-Qiyamah. I want you to imagine yourself in a big hall, a massive hall, bigger than anything you've ever seen, with billions and billions of people in this scorching heat. You stumble around, looking for any type of shade, and in the distance, you see a throne. And you see 7 groups of people under that throne. And you stumble towards it, but you realize, I can't enter. And you remember the hadith of Rasulullah. You remember the hadith where there are 7 groups of people who will be under the shade of the throne of Allah when there's no shade except that piece. And what is the first group of those 7 brothers and sisters? Imamun adil, a just ruler. وَشَابٌ نَشْأَ فِي عِبَادَةِ اللَّهِ, a boy or a young man who grew up in worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. رَجُلٌ قَلْبُهُ مُتَعَلِّقٌ بِالْمَسَاجِدِ, a man whose heart is so attached to the masajid. 2 men who loved each other for the sake of Allah, they would meet upon it and they would part upon it. A man who is nearly seduced by a woman, but he says, إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ, indeed I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, I don't want anything to do with this. A man who gives so much and he hides it so well that his left hand doesn't even know what his right hand gives. And finally, a man who remembered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in private such that he would begin to cry. Now on the hottest day that you will ever experience in the dunya and in the akhirah, inshallah we never come near the nar, so that will be the hottest day inshallah. On that day, any of these deeds, any of these actions will bring you the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So inshallah, you don't have to stumble for that shade, you will be resurrected in that shade. Allahumma ameen. Now in the second station, in that second scene of that mawqif, you will see people that you used to know. You will see the brothers and sisters that you thought believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, standing behind those who they really worshipped. Standing behind those who they actually followed in the dunya. كل إنسان يقف خلف ما كان يعبد. Every person will stand behind that whom they used to worship, the person or thing that they used to follow. So you're going to ask me, we're Muslims, we're on Tawheed, we don't believe or worship anything besides Allah. But you'll come to realize that there are many things that you follow next to Him without you even realizing it. You will see people standing behind their spouses. People worship their spouses. You will see people standing behind their parents, celebrities, rock stars, food and money, TV shows and movies. Without realizing it, sometimes we give precedence to things besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many times are maybe we're watching a movie, or you're out, maybe you're in the gym, and you see the adhan, I'll pray later. An hour passes by, I promise I'll pray. And you end up totally skipping that salah. And you have to pray later before you go to sleep. Because you gave precedence to something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now as you are observing everything around you on this day, you see people being grabbed by their hands from your right and from your left. And they're thrown into a group by themselves. And you're wondering, what horrible thing did these people do? Rasulullah tells us, من حافظ عليها كانت له نورا وبرهانا ونجاة يوم القيامة. Whoever preserves their salah, it will be for them a light, an evidence, and a salvation on يوم القيامة. ومن لم يحافظ عليها لم يكن له نور ولا برهان ولا نجاة. And if you do not preserve it, it will be none of those three. وكان يوم القيامة مع قارون وفرعون وهامان وأبي بن خلف. That's how serious it is. If you skip your salah, you will be with Fir'aun. You will be with Qarun. You will be with the worst men in Islamic history. And guess what? If you're grouped up with them, do you think they're just going to go to hell and you're going to stride into Jannah? If you're grouped up with them, brothers and sisters, you're going where they are going. And guess what? The common denominator between those groups of men and the people who do not pray is their arrogance. Because it is truly arrogance that keeps you from salah. Now in the final station, this is, in my opinion, the scariest one. You will see what we call tariquz zakat, the people who withheld that which was never theirs to keep. When the needy begged, they said no. When the orphan came, they closed their fist. When people asked them for anything, just a little bit of money, they turned away from them. Their wealth and their money was their God and their shield in the dunya, but on Yawm al-Qiyamah, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will be no shield and it will be no God, it will be nothing in front of Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that every single coin, every single piece of gold, every single piece of silver that they hoarded in this dunya, فَتُكْوَى بِهَا جِبَاهُهُمْ وَجُنُوبُهُمْ وَظُهُورُهُم هَذَا مَا كَنَزْتُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ فَذُوقُوا مَا كَانُوا تَكْنِزُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that for every coin, every piece of wealth that you hoarded in the dunya, it will be scorching hot. It will be not gleaming, glowing from the fires of Jahannam, and you will be branded with it. You will be branded with it. And even in your disfigurement, you will be recognized by everyone that you know as tariquz zakat, and you will be branded with it on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Ya Allah, we ask you to spare us from this punishment. Allahumma ameen. My brothers and sisters, these scenes should terrify you as much as they terrify me. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us of our sins and to protect us from these punishments. Allahumma ameen. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. قوموا إلى صلاتكم ويرحمكم الله.